As promised, guys, I'm doing number 29 again, but I'm doing it the p-value method way, just in case there may be a p-value question on the final exam. And it is up to you to not only review the videos, but all your notes, your labs, your other exams, yada, yada, yada. So I'm not going to read the question over again. We're going to identify a few things, and then we're going to continue. When it comes to the p-value method, step number 1 is to write your hypotheses, your null, and your alternative. In this case, right, the null says there is no difference between a specified value and your parameter. And read the question in this case, right? It says an extensive study in 1980 concluded the mean mercury level in oysters from the White Bear estuary was 0.05 parts per million. So because our null states there is no difference, mu is going to equal to 0.025 parts per million. The alternative is what we're trying to look for. And we're trying to conclude that the 2012 level is lower than the 1980. Therefore, mu is less than 0.025. Once again, the null is not our claim. The alternative is our claim. Based on the inequality symbol of my alternative hypotheses, this is a one-tailed test. And it's one-tailed to the left. Step number 2, when it comes to the p-value method, you want to compute test statistic. I missed the M in compute. Test statistic. Before we compute the test statistic, we need to know the type of test we're running. In this case, this is going to be a z-test. A one-sample z-test because we know our population standard deviation. When sigma is known, we use z-interval, z-critical values, z-test. In the z-test formula, z equals to your sample mean minus the population mean divided by your population standard deviation, which is divided by the square root of the sample size. So z equals to the sample mean that comes from a sample of 50 oysters is going to be 0.018 parts per million. So 0.018 minus the population mean, which was found in 1980, which is 0.025, divided by our population standard deviation of 0.022, divided by the square root of the sample size, which is going to be 50. When we calculate this in our calculator, let's go back. The way we did it, oops, I don't like the way that looks. There we go. That equal to negative 2.25 when I round to two numbers after the decimal. All right. Step number 3 is going to be compute the p-value. To compute the p-value, we're going to draw our standard normal curve. Compute p-value. Let's draw a bell-shaped curve. Let's take our test statistic, which is negative 2.25. And we have to shade. In this case, we're shading to the left. The reason why we're shading to the left, because once again, this is a left-tailed test. The direction of my inequality determines the way that I am shading. Once I do that, I'm now going to go to my z-score table because I want to find the probability that z, in this case, is less than negative 2.25. Using notation that I did back in videos, I think 22, 23, 24, 25. All right. Negative 2.25. Go down to negative 2.2. Scroll over to the 5. That probability is going to be 0.0122. Remember, if it is shaded to the left, you leave the probability the way it is. If this was a right tail test, once you find that probability on the z-score table, you must subtract that probability from 1. Do not forget about that. In this case, this is going to be our p-value, 0.0122, which means we can go to step number 4 and make our decision. And when it comes to the p-value method, 1, if p is less than or equal to the alpha level, we reject the null hypothesis. If your p-value is greater than your alpha level, do not reject the null. Our alpha level in this case is 0.01. And as we can see, the p-value is greater than the alpha level. Because the p-value is greater than the alpha level, we do not reject the null. Therefore, because we're not rejecting the null, when we're at our conclusion, we are stating that there is not enough evidence, or there's insufficient evidence to conclude that mercury, the level of mercury concentration in 2012 is less than 1980. Alright guys, that's it to number 29 using the p-value method. As I stated before, moving on forward, traditional method all the way through. I'll see you soon.